Fun little fact. Yes, Dr. Terry is technically my boss, but if you really want to know who my boss is, she's standing right there. She bosses me around every day. Okay. I come from Missouri. I taught in Central Missouri for about 5 years there. Went to the University of Missouri. Fun fact, Dr. Terry's son and I were actually, hopefully this pairs up too. Me and Dr. Terry's son were actually in FFA together. We competed at national contests together. While also teaching, our school really didn't like to give us a lot of funding. They said, okay, for 2 teachers, your entire yearly budget is $2,500. That included shop, greenhouse, classroom, everything. So I learned real quick, I have to write a lot of grants. In 4 years of writing grants, I was awarded about almost $250,000 to help out our program. Outside of that, I was also awarded roughly $12,000 in personal grants and scholarships, and I'll talk about what those went for. Where I got all of my credibility and learning of grant writing and different things, my mother is an associate dean for the University of Missouri. She was a grant writer for about 22 years. She brought in, as of this spring, almost $500 million to the University of Missouri. And so I learned a lot from watching her, listening to her, her helping me out. And so that's kind of where I got all of my grant writing abilities. But the first part here, okay, is I want you to take like a little 5-minute writing exercise, use the back of that sheet, and I want you just to write a little prompt, okay? Okay, now you don't want to work. Answering the question, describe your program, including FFA, courses, and your student population. However, I'm only going to give you about no more than 5 minutes. You can only use 1,000 character maximum. We're going to talk about what characters are and why they're important. And then lastly, you cannot put your school name or city within the prompt. And that's big because a lot of grants that you will apply for will tell you, like, you only put your name and information in the very top. After that, you cannot put any identifiable information in there because they want to keep everything anonymous. One of the grants we're going to talk about actually awards you $100,000 for your program, and they want no identifiable information at all. So take 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, answer that question real quick on the back. Oh, thank you. Answer that question on the back, and I'm going to talk about kind of what to look for whenever you're writing these grants. Okay, as you kind of finish up your train of thought, I'm going to ask you kind of a couple basic questions. So, number one, how many of you restated the question in the very first 3 sentences, or within the first 3 sentences? Okay, when you go to answer grant writing questions or questions and prompts, it is always a good idea to answer those questions within the first 3 sentences. Number one, it reassures your reader that you know what you're writing about and that you are directly reading what you're writing about. I fell victim to this my first grant I ever wrote. I kind of just word vomited on the entire thing and just went for it. And when I got the critique back, they said you need to learn how to answer the questions that's being asked. After that, I started working with my mother, and she started showing me, okay, this simple question here, you can easily state, in our FFA program, we're a rural area school with approximately 500 kids, K through 12, with 140 student population in our FFA program. That right there can tell you can answer all 3 parts in the very first beginning, and then after that, then you can expand upon that. While you're expanding, that's where you start to really highlight different things. We are a national 3-star chapter. We have an average of 15 American degree recipients every year. We have 10 state degree recipients every year. You can really start to flush everything out. Did you use a, quote, non-common word more than 5 times in your prompt? A non-common word would be saying something like, if you're writing a grant for case curriculum, you're going to use the word curriculum more than 5 times in that one prompt. The reason for that is that it gets very boring. It's very dull. They get tired of rereading the same thing. How many of you went to Oklahoma State and had Dr. Edwards by chance for as a professor? Okay, he will tell you the same thing. If you write the same word more than 5 times within one paragraph, he is going to start slashing the word out of your papers. I learned that the hard way as well. And then lastly, did you, quote, fill in the text box requirements? That's where the characters come into play. If you are writing this and it says we're going to give 1,000 characters, my suggestion to you is that you get within at least 90% of that. If you are not filling it up, you're not doing as good a possibility to describe what it is you're trying to write. This first grant we talk about has a lot of character limits to its parts. Some of them, your character limit's going to be 500 to answer that first question. So you got to be really crafty with your word choices. Last but not least, did you answer the question being asked? Okay, it's very important that you answer exactly what is being asked. Even if you read ahead and all of a sudden you start tying into other boxes, grant readers and grant evaluators don't want to see that. They want to see, okay, for this specific question, did you answer what I'm asking for? Not did you answer this and answer a question later on that I'm going to have to reread your answer and basically get the same information twice. Okay, kind of the do's and don'ts of grant writing. Okay, don't write a grant if you don't intend to use the money. If you're not going to use all the funds that you're asking for, don't write it. It is a very easy way to lose credibility and actually have them come after you and say, hey, we want some of that money back. In Missouri, we have this thing called a 50-50 grant as well as an enhancement grant. When you get those grants, if you don't use all the money by the calendar date that is specified, they're going to ask for that money back. Do not write a grant if you are not ready to take ownership of your projects and your products. The biggest grant I wrote was for $120,000. We were awarded it. It was for 75-25. State paid 75%, school paid 25%. The school had to pay $30,000 for this. We ended up getting an entire plasma table and a brand new greenhouse out of it. That plasma table alone, with the training, was $75,000. I had to make sure that I was willing to use it. Within the first year, we started doing all sorts of different projects, not just for our program, but for other school programs as well. The football team, the parents really wanted a little bit of ornaments with their kids' number on them. We made 5 numbers for each student on the team. We sold out in less than 12 hours. Every single number was gone. We had to redo it over and over again every single year, and it's something that was really good. Don't write a grant just because the school next to you got something. So if you're here in Stillwater, they get a brand new plasma table, and you're up at Morrison, and they're like, oh, well, I want that same thing. Okay, don't write it just because of that. Write it because your community has a need for it. Medill, huge area with a lot of trailer manufacturers around. They might write something that gets them a lot of things that helps them build trailers to then sell to these corporations or helps tie things in. And here in the middle of Stillwater, okay, you might have 1 or 2 trailer sales places. Maybe it's not a good idea for you to try and mimic what they're doing. Also, kind of a big thing, if you know you're going to be leaving a school, don't write a grant and then not assist the person coming in to take your place. I put a little asterisk next to that because I did do that, but I also stayed an extra 2 months after my contract was done to assist the new teacher coming in because he was a first-year teacher. I wanted to make sure he was comfortable with everything that we were getting and he understood what we were getting. But if you know you're going to leave and walk out, don't write it. Do write a grant if you're going to have a purpose for the proposed items. Like I said, if you know that you have a need for that plasma cutter or that new greenhouse, write it, use it. My background's actually in plant science. When I wrote that grant for a new greenhouse, I was more ecstatic than my co-teacher who actually taught the plant science courses. I worked for a landscape business for 11 years, did everything from wholesale all the way up to irrigation, fencing, installation. I ran the big equipment for everybody. That was kind of my thing, and whenever I knew that we were getting a new greenhouse, I was like a kid in a candy store. Write a grant if it benefits multiple disciplines. When I say that, we wrote for a water bath system. It's about $1,800 for us. But what it did was it allowed us to actually incorporate ethanol production labs into our ag power class. And so I can actually have kids bring in their dead grass, their soybeans, their corn, and we can actually mash it up and actually run ethanol labs on them to see what's the ethanol production on these different foodstuffs. And the kids absolutely loved it. They got to see it. We made these little combustion chambers out of real heavy-duty PVC plastic, and the kids got to test their fuel to see which one could lift the weight the highest whenever we're exploding the fuel. Real fun lab. The science department, they've been wanting to get a water lab, but they just couldn't get the funding through the school. When they heard that we got this new water bath, we set up a schedule, okay? These 3 science teachers, they needed on these certain dates to run their labs, or roughly those dates. I said, okay, well, it's our water bath. We got it first, so we're going to set our schedule first, and then we'll lend it out to you all whenever you all need it. Remember, you all wrote the grant. You all got the product. It is yours first, the school second. And if the school tries to fight you on that, just put it in your building, lock it up. They'll never know it's there. And also, do write a grant if you are personally responsible and you are ready to be responsible for your products. That $75,000 plasma table, I learned I had to put oil on the tracks once every 2 weeks because as much as we were using it. So I made sure on my big calendar, at the bottom of the date on the little box, I put oil plasma table. And I'd go out there and I'd oil everything up, I'd grease it up, make sure everything ran smooth. I'd reset everything. I'd make sure to drain the water every couple months, put new water in because of the rust buildup. It wasn't until later I learned that there's actually a product to prevent the rust. So some of the grants that I've written have been a finalist for or have been awarded. That's what I'm going to kind of talk about, and these are all grants that you'll get. The last slide actually gives you all the direct links to these. So whenever you get back to your schools, if you're like, hey, I want to write some of these to get some money for my program, you can have it. The first one is the Harbor Freight Tools for Schools. I did not realize they wrote this until it only opened up in 2016. First grants was in 2017. That's when I wrote for it. This is going to be the biggest grant that you will probably write for your education program. They award 3 $100,000 winners and 15 $50,000 winners. The big thing about this one, if you are a single teacher department and you're awarded the $100,000 grant, they specifically write it and will actually observe you getting money. They will write $80,000 for you to put for your shop, your greenhouse, your food science lab. The other $20,000 goes directly to your classroom. If you need a new laptop cart, they want you to use that 20 grand for that. If you want a new industrial printer for your program, you write it for that. If you are a multi-teacher department, okay, 2 all the way up to 10, they will give you $70,000 for your shop, greenhouse, food science lab, $30,000 to be split up amongst you all. Now you all can work together and purchase a big industrial printer, or new desktops, laptops, whatever you want, new desks for your classrooms, but they're going to give you $30,000 instead of 20, and it has to be split amongst you all. And yes, they will watch the schools when that money comes in, because as we all know, sometimes schools get money and things like to get shifted over sometimes. They're going to be watching very heavy, and they're going to ask for every receipt be itemized. As I said, one of the biggest grants you'll write, it consists of 9 different prompts outside of the main information piece that are 3 paragraphs each. They give you 6,000 characters total for each prompt. It took me roughly a week to get this done. I wrote about 1 to 2 prompts each and every single day. Went through and edited everything. It's a lot, but they're very directed questions. The first question that I had you all write about was literally the very first prompt. I lowered it from 6,000 characters to 1,000 just for time's sake, but you get a lot of space to write about your programs and different things. You do have to put forth a proposed budget. So if you know, okay, we get the 100,000, we're going to buy a $40,000 plasma table, we're going to go buy, I don't know what the farm bot costs, let's say it's 10,000. We're going to go buy new desks for our classroom, so on and so forth. You have to itemize everything out. My suggestion to you, if you do this, I would also put aside another budget in there that shows the $50,000. So say you're not awarded the big one, you can show what you're going to use for the $50,000 budget. It does require a post-grant reflection, which is a 3-page essay, okay, over the 9 prompts from before. Okay, how did you use it? Okay. How did your program benefit from this? Okay, how did it change your student population in your program? And then lastly, there are only 18 grants awarded annually. They give away over $1 million. If you do the math, it's over $1 million every single year. To my knowledge, there have been 15 ag teachers across the country that have been awarded this. This is open to all CTE teachers. So if you know you got an automotive teacher in there and you're also the ag teacher, technically you both could win. And so then your school's awarded potentially $200,000, which is a lot of money. This one? No, there is not. If you go and you get this one, they don't care if you buy Harbor Freight tools. Me, that's what my program did. We bought all our hand tools from Harbor Freight and all our power tools from Lowe's and Home Depot. The reason we bought all the hand tools from Harbor Freight is because if they break, you can take them back and they'll give you a new one. Lifetime warranty. Not so much with Lowe's and Home Depot. But they don't care what you use it on. They would like that you would buy some Harbor Freight stuff, you know, new toolboxes, new things that you could say that Harbor Freight, that you purchase through them to support them. But there is not a requirement that says that, yes, you have to purchase stuff from Harbor Freight.
Tool related, or can you buy like?
It's open. It is literally funds. They want funds for the education programs just so that way they can start putting back into the programs. They are not looking for anything specific. There is not a, you know, you have to buy tools. It can be if you need new software for your computers, put that on there. If you need new desks, put that on there. New freezers for your blue and gold, put that on there. If you want a walking food science class, put it on there. They just want to know, okay, what are you going to be spending it on? You don't have to put where you're going to buy it from either. So if you know that, okay, we have a specific dealer for our floor coolers, they don't need to know who your dealer is. They just want to know, okay, what is it going to be used for? What's the cost? And how will this benefit your students? And again, it's a blanket $100,000 grant or $50,000 grant if you're awarded the $50,000. The next one we're going to kind of talk about is case curriculum. Okay, according to Dr. Jake, case curriculum is not overly big in Oklahoma. There are teachers that have it. Mr. Branscombe here, he has it. I'm certified in 2 different classes. I'm actually trying to get a couple more, mainly because I'd like to eventually have a job at Oklahoma State and be able to offer it to the state of Oklahoma. These grants, they are a lot smaller than the Harbor Freight Tools for Schools, but they're still very good because this curriculum, you can use the whole thing if you want, or you can use little bits and pieces. It's however you want to use it. There are multiple grant offerings. Some of them are related to specific areas. I'm going to pass this handout real quick. As I said, some of them are area specific. So if you're from just the general United States, there's 2 of them that directly affect the general United States. They're $2,000 each. One of them specifically goes to the ag mechanics courses. There's 2 of them, ag power technology and mechanical systems in agriculture. Both of those have one specific grant. The other one, it's for any class you want. So if you want to do intro to agriculture, food and natural resources, if you want to do the food science course, whatever it is, it will help you get to go take the class. Say you are already certified, you can rewrite for the grant to then go and get for implementation, meaning buy new equipment, buy new supplies. For that is specific. They want you to buy the materials that are listed on the actual Case for Learning website. So if you need lab aids, if you need sensors, they give you that and they say, okay, how are you going to spend your $2,000? They will occasionally, depending on the year, this year they didn't have it, that's why it's not listed on there, but occasionally they do have a $10,000 implementation grant, which then allows you to go and buy even more materials for your classes. The big thing about this one, though, okay, is that it can be awarded many times as possible. However, you can only get 1 per year. So if you get one this year, you're not going to get a second one just because you filled out a second grant. You're only going to get the first one, and then the next year you apply, the next year you apply, and so on and so forth. I've been awarded 2 in 2 years. Went to 2 different case institutes. Absolutely loved it. Thought it was great. I highly recommend it. You get to travel the country to go see these different places. They're hosted all over. They've had them in Alaska, Hawaii. They've had them all up in Maine, Florida. They've even hosted a couple just in Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas. Oklahoma State here, we've actually, with the new Frontiers building, we're actually building an actual room specifically to teach not only the future ag teachers, but to teach case curriculum. And that way, if you all decide eventually you want to teach it, you don't have to drive or fly out to Washington or to Oregon, you can stay right here in Oklahoma and get certified in a class. It does not cover travel to and from the site, so you are responsible for that. So again, if you're going to Alaska and you got to fly there, you have to get your own plane ticket to and from, but it does cover the cost to attend it, covers most of your meals, it covers your room and board, it covers the curriculum and the training for everything. Typically, they're between 5 and 10 days long. It'll cost about $1,700 to $3,000 for the whole content. Both of my grants were worth $2,000. They will then give you $2,000 credit, so then say it's a $3,000 one, you have to come up with $1,000 somewhere else. Our school offered a PD grant. I wrote that for $1,000. They said, hey, you're the first person that's actually written this grant in 2 years, so here's your $1,000, go have fun. And I got to go for free. The only bad part was I had to drive 12 and a half hours to the place and 12 and a half hours back when I was done. That was the only bad part. Very easy grants to write. I think the maximum they want in characters is 2,500 per box, but they ask for a minimum of 250. If you write, I believe it, I'll talk about this here in a little bit. If you write like 5 sentences, you're almost always going to be over that 250 character count. And characters means that is every individual letter and spaces. Okay, so if you write, a full sentence, you got to count every letter and every space, and that's what's going to equal your character total. Some of you all might remember from SAE grant. Was that before? Give you a little count. That's what they're meaning. Okay. Now, if you flip that first page over, I want you all to pair up groups 2, 3, 4, 5, however you want to do it. I want you to read these 2 prompts. Okay. One of these actually was on one of my winning grants that I wrote. The other one was just one that I threw together randomly. Kind of read through them and kind of discuss with the neighbor, kind of see which one you like best, which one you don't like, answer why, and then figure out, okay, what is the difference between the two? Because I'm going to talk about what it is that you need to look for when you're writing these things and when you're editing these things. Because what you can do and what you should do are completely different things. So kind of read real quick, talk with your neighbor, and then we'll come back and discuss them. Does anybody want to share kind of the differences that they see between the two?
The first one has actual figures for what they're going to actually work with under your enrollment.
First one has actual figures. Okay, that's kind of the big difference. Was there anything else that you all noticed?
Curriculum's used like 136 times in the bottom.
Curriculum's used about 100 some odd times in the bottom. Okay, I will admit the very first paragraph I broke one of my rules. I did write curriculum, I think it was 6 times, so I went 1 over the 5 rule. But other than that, I tried to kind of change it up. But the big difference is those figures. When you are writing grants, these people want data, because how else are they going to make their flyers? They want to know how many students are getting affected, how many classes are getting affected, how many teachers are getting to use this. They want to know what classes are getting used for. Even if you get a food science curriculum grant to go to the food science class, you can still use that in your introductory course. You can use that even in your Ag Science 2 course. They want to know exactly how big of a scope is this going to affect. And the bigger the scope that you can write, the better your chances are. As I said before, I was never denied one of these grants. The number of grants they give out every year does change, and they base it on the quality of grants. One year, between the 4 different ones, they gave out over 200 grants. The next year, they only gave out about 125, and they said the quality of grants went down. So they didn't give away as many. But as more high-quality grants come in, they will offer you more chances to get it. Another thing about, especially this one, if you all decide to write it, as I send out this, or Mr. Jones sends this PowerPoint out, I'm more than happy to look over your grants and read them and kind of edit them. This was one of the big ones I did. This is where my professional scholarship came through. A lot of my ones did for the $12,000 to implement this into my classroom. Is CASE the end-all, be-all for your program? Absolutely not. Is it a very good tool? Yes. If your school is starting to really be a PLC school and they're trying to push STEM curriculum into you, if you show them this, it's a real good benefit to you. I was asked a question, do you have to go to the sites to get the curriculum? If you have a teacher who's already certified and they leave, you are allowed to use the curriculum 2 years free of charge, no problem. And you can print every single thing off and you have it for the rest of your life. They're not going to know. If you have somebody else that you know that is already certified, everything is gone digital. So now everything's on the computer. It's just by a login. So if you say, hey, I really like what you did here. You talked about this. Would you mind sharing your login information with me so I can get that lesson? They don't particularly like that you do that, but at the same time, they're not going to stop you from doing that because they understand that sometimes, you may not be awarded. Curriculum might be hard to find. You might be trying to implement your first, ag power technology course in your program. So they want to be able to get that out there. The beauty of the CASE curriculum, if Ms. Sherman here gets certified in it, it sticks with her for the rest of her career and beyond. It does not stay with the school unless you leave. Then they get a 2-year leeway with it. Other than that, so if you decide, you're at El Reno, correct? Say she goes from El Reno to Veneta, she gets to take it with her up to Veneta. It's hers. Okay? It is not the school's. And the school cannot sit there and say, well, hey, why did you take your curriculum with you? It's like, well, it's because I'm the one certified in it. It's mine. It's not the school's. And my school knew that, and the teacher that took over my spot, he's using my curriculum for this year and next year, and he's already planning on going and getting certified, but that's why I stayed an extra 2 months, was to walk him through everything, because it can be daunting at times, but in all actuality, once you start playing with the different sensors, it becomes really easy to work with. Okay. Living to Serve grants. Most of you all probably, these next few, okay, they come through FFA. Most of you have probably heard about these. You might have even written them yourselves. It's found through FFA.org. It can be a year long, a semester long, or 1 day long. These are grants for you to put forth to better your community, better your program. You do have to write kind of like a little proposed budget, kind of a little seminar about, or a little semantic about what it is you're trying to do. They do have different value points. The year long is $3,000, the semester long is $1,000, the 1 day is $400. My co-teacher and I, we did multiple 1 day projects throughout the year to kind of benefit. We had a new dog park put in, so we took the $400 and we went and we built new benches and new kind of dog agility run things for the community. The community absolutely loved it. The next year we went and we added a couple more things to that. The year after that, we went and we actually had a community park. The city actually came to us, hey, we want to implement a community garden. Would you all be willing to write to, rent tools to help us make a community garden? We got the day grant. We went out, we rented a giant tiller on the back for our tractor, tilled everything up, we got plants in, and our kids actually sowed all the plants and helped get everything going, and it's totally for the community. And now I believe we had it originally at about a 1/4 acre size garden. It's now up to about 3 acres for this entire community garden. Granted, about half of it's in sweet corn because our community just absolutely loves sweet corn. Tractor Supply grants for growing. Again, you can get up to $5,000 for them. It's for a specific activity. You cannot use the same activity year after year after year. I know ag teachers who have tried that. They have been rejected and have literally been told you cannot use the same activity year after year. But it can be used for your program, your classroom, all sorts of different things. Again, it's found on FFA.org. It's very easy to write. Again, they do have character limits. I believe it's 2,500 per prompt. Very, very easy to write. Very kind of straightforward in a sense. We got this one to build an actual little community shed for clothes and non-perishable item donations, to where people who needed things that may not have had the money to go purchase them, they could just go in, grab what they need, and then they can leave. It was very easy to build up our program. Yes? 5 minutes? Okay. Very easy to put up. Our program actually built the entire shed. We made a custom sign with that plasma table for it to put above it, and then we put it out near one of the main banks because they said we could put it on their property. And it's been a big hit. They still, to this day, people are constantly going in, donating things. People are taking things out. So it's been a real big thing for our program. Lastly, kind of the big one, or second to last piece, kind of the big one, SC grants. You all have written these before. I've only, in 5 years teaching, I've only ever had one student be denied. We had over 35 students who have been awarded SAE grants. You can get grants awarded multiple years. I had one student who got a grant every year that he was in high school. He wanted to start a lawn mowing business, got the $1,000, got a push mower and weed eater, and he slowly grew it up. By his senior year, he had 3 zero-turn lawn mowers, like 4 weed eaters, 3 blowers, the whole get up. And he said the vast majority of it came from his SAE grants. Again, this is another thing I'm willing to help edit things. My email is going to be on here. You have to be able to show a true need, and it does take an advisor approval. And if you don't particularly like the student, or you know the student's not going to use the funds, you can put that in there because the student's never going to see it. But if you know that student really does need the funds to get started in SAE, they don't have to pay this money back. It's very simple. Okay, this one's a little bit different because it's the Farm Credit of Oklahoma. This was actually, I thought was the case when I passed out, but you already have it right now. This is not a grant, this is a loan, but it's the same process. We use this for our students who are of lower SES status, who needed help getting involved and wanted to do livestock production. Here in Oklahoma, you all have it a little better than we did up in Missouri. We were only given $500 to $1,000 for livestock species. You all are given between $1,000 to $2,500 for your livestock species. You get a year-long time frame to pay it off. It is a 0% interest loan. The only catch is that not every farm or ag credit in Oklahoma does it. The one here in Stillwater does not do it. However, if you go up to Ponca City, they actually have even better benefits. You can get, like I believe on the sheet there, $2,500 for a dairy cow, or for a steer, $1,000 for everything else. In western Oklahoma, I believe it's $1,000 for everything. In Missouri, like I said, $500 to $1,000. Very simple to write. You do have to have your student actually present this at an annual meeting with the group. Not very daunting at all. Basically, you make a one-page poster on a PowerPoint. You show it off, and they get to present it. We had students who did this. They wanted to get started in chickens. I had a kid who took $500 his first year. He was gifted a chicken coop by his grandfather. He paid $300 to fix it up and make it bigger. We got chickens for free from a local research place that studied chicken feed, and they needed specific chickens. Everything else, they would say, okay, we have 10,000 extra chicks. How many do you want? He said, I want 200 chickens. He raised them up. He processed them, sold them for $10 a bird after being processed. He made $2,000 right off of that. He was able to pay it off and then start everything over again and keep going. Very simple, very short, very sweet. The more money you take, obviously, the bigger risk. If you have multiple kids fill this out, I would caution them and make sure that those kids are actually going to really pay it back. And then just some other ones that I didn't do. The CHS Foundation Classroom Grants, these are up to $500. I never personally filled these two out. I learned about them there towards the end of my teaching time. The other one was the Home Depot Community Impact Grant. It's $5,000. That one kind of is specific. They really want you to be kind of building up your community and or helping out veterans in your local community. That one isn't very long. I think it's only like 2 pages, but it's a $5,000 grant for your program. Again, that's kind of the end-all be-all. The last slide here will have all the links to everything, so you can copy paste it and you can go find it. I'm going to send this to Mr. Jones to send it out to everybody here. If you all have any more questions, my email is on the first slide. You're more than welcome to contact me. I'm more than happy to read through your grants, help edit things. Yeah, that's kind of everything I have. So hopefully, yeah. You have a question, or you want me to go back? Go back. There you go. Any questions? Any last minute things?
How do we reach you? I know it's on the slide.
My email, it's literally chris.rankin@okstate.edu. It's all lowercase, very easy to get to. If you don't know where the ag department is at Oklahoma State, I'm up there in 458. If you need to come see me in person, I'm more than happy to do that. But yeah, this is kind of a thing that I was kind of passionate about, because when you're only given $2,500 for your entire program and 2 teachers and 16 classes, you got to find money somehow. So thank you all.